Oh, I've been in there for probably 2 hours laying in fiberglass dust and I think I want to cry. I die a little bit every day here at work, guys. I honestly do. I die a little bit every day. And that almost did me in. That was a shocker. But it's now done.
We are heading full bore into a component of the boat build that I'm not quite ready for, so I've allowed myself about another 3 weeks to get everything ready, and that is to start electrical layout, if nothing else and if nothing more than pulling wires and getting wires ready for ultimately the end result, which is a complete Victron system with a 3000 watt inverter. Now, I've gone down that rabbit hole every night for about the last 3 months on YouTube and everything, trying to absorb as much information as I can. I have to admit, I'm not as electrically inclined as I would like to be. I always did struggle with the concept of electric, so I've done the Nigel Call, DC course, and I've done as much reading as I can possibly do, but at some stage you have to say, do I get an electrician in to do all the DC systems on the boat, or do you do it yourself? I personally believe we're able to do it ourselves, and young Zach, Ellen's boyfriend, my daughter's boyfriend, who is just an integral part of this build as well, has been involved in a lot of the major parts, including the deck glue down and fitting of the hard top and a whole lot of other parts of the boat that originally he really hasn't been involved in, is now offered to give me a couple of weeks of his time, and we're going to basically get in and at least get the structure of our system ready. We've got to incorporate a lot of systems into this boat. We have dual engines to start with, which basically have dual alternators on each engine. So our plan is to have one dedicated alternator on each motor for the start batteries, for the cranking batteries, and the other two will be fed into the house. Now, doing that might sound reasonably simple, just pull a couple of wires, but it's not that easy because we intend to put lithium batteries in the boat, around about 600 to 800 amps of power. We do need to have external regulators on those alternators. Now, they are Vallejo 125 amp alternators, and fortunately, Balmar in the US actually do an external regulator kit which actually will upgrade my Vallejo alternators to lithium compatible and certainly be able to externally regulate them to avoid overheating and damage to the alternator. Obviously, with lithium batteries, there's a totally different charge profile we need to consider. We also need to install what they call a center fielder, which brings both the alternators into one place. The external regulators will regulate the voltage, and that center fielder will then control where that voltage comes from, when it comes, and when to shut off the generation of the power to the house. And so there's a lot to consider here. I do have a wiring diagram. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. It is a wiring diagram that is already designed for a catamaran, and luckily all these resources are out here now, and Victron on their links distributor website actually has this particular wiring diagram, and I intend to use this pretty closely, with the exception of different alternator regulators, which are the wake speed on the particular diagram. I'll be using Balmar because I was able to get them, and certainly they do have a brilliant reputation. They're fairly easily configured through Bluetooth and through the device itself, which is actually nice. But the last thing I want to be doing is head down into a hole upside down in the engine room trying to configure an alternator regulator. I'd rather do it on an app on a laptop or on my phone. So first things first, I've got a lot to do today. I'm going to head in there, and Zach and I came to the conclusion that he would be able to get into the back of the dinette module and do all the wiring. So I'm going to trust that he can fit, even though he's 6'4". He is very thin, and I am not. So he'll be able to get in to the back of the module and do a lot of the wiring components. We intend to put looms in, and we intend to have it nice and neat on particular panels so that we can actually keep all the thing as neat as possible. And we want that perfect look that everybody else goes for. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but it certainly will be a brilliant setup for us, and I will know where every single wire within the DC system runs to. AC is a totally different story. I do have a BEP AC circuit breaker panel. I've already got that, and I'll certainly have that installed as well, and it will go straight into the Victron Multiplus 2 inverter that I've purchased. Look, there's a lot to do here, so the first thing I need to do is make sure that every surface where the wiring is going to run has been prepared and is flow coated so that I don't have to remove the wiring to paint out that surface. So that's where I'm heading now. So our DC panel cabinet will be here. There'll be a reasonably large door, firstly so that we've got good access into this area here, but also so that I've got plenty of room to put the gauges for my water tanks, fuel tanks. Although they'll also be received on our Garmin plotter, we would also like to have those gauges available here, but we don't want to put them in the nav station. We're not that worried about the state of our tanks while we're sitting in our lounge room and eating a nice dinner and worried about how full our black water tanks are. So I've got a large cabinet here. My panels are around about 250 by 300, so a lot of extra space here, but this access hole does need to be large enough to be able to get in and out. Now I do have a complete drawing here of the last one that was made, so I'm able to cut this pretty much to the right size. So the AC panel will be in here, and that'll be another hole. So rather than pulling the module in and out, in and out, in and out, which makes it very, very difficult to move in here, particularly because it comes across the companionway here that I'm standing in, we've opted to actually fit the module and work through the actual holes that we've cut, as well as the access through the bottom here. Now, as is always the case on boats, and even though I'm not on the water yet, I've got so much stuff just jammed down in here. I've got a dog bowl for Lexi here. I've got plastic bags, ropes, lines, a couple of tools that that crate on under here. I've got sanding discs and stuff, and then over here I've got screwdrivers in the works. So I need to remove all the stuff out from under here, because ultimately I need to vacuum out and clean under here so I can start making some good marks for composite angle and for tabbing. And I also need to sand the floor to make sure that it is prepped and keyed for laminating it into place here so that it's a permanent feature of the boat.
So it's so important to contain the dust. I'm going to put the lids back on so that while I'm grinding those cabinets out, all the dust stays within that module, and then I can just vacuum it up. Dust is a big issue, and I continue to vacuum 3 to 4 times a week, remove the dust bags regularly, change the filters on the vacuum. I use a particular filtered bag as well, not just a cardboard bag, but you can never stop this stuff. It's pervasive, it gets into absolutely everything.
Flying head first towards the install, or at least the rough install of our wiring. And there's been a million other jobs come up before we can even start to do that. I need to make sure that every single compartment is ready to accept wiring, flow coated out where needed, painted where needed, and I'm working on some panels with which to mount the full Victron system on it. In here, I've just finished up laying a sheet of 20mm foam here that's going to form the bulkheads for underneath the dinette module. Now I'm going to be compartmentalizing that dinette module so that I can fit, firstly, our heating and air conditioning system, which I'm really happy about, the battery bank, which is going to be all lithium house batteries, and then on the port side will be the inverter setup, obviously my AC, DC panels and distribution boards and the like. So lots going on. Laid this up this morning. I'm hoping to get the other half of it done Savo. I've only done one side, but I do need these flat sheets ready so I can just cut the bulkheads, sit them in place. The dinette module is not yet secured in there, but it's going to be secured pretty soon so that I can get in and flow code it all out so that when Zach and Jeff and I start to assemble the electric system, we can just basically go in there and install everything and then start running wires and ferreting wires throughout the hull, hopefully getting a complete rough in of all the wiring within a week or so. So Janet and I, we sort of went out there looking for quotes, and quite frankly, it was starting to get very, very difficult to get a decent quote. So we're going to do the install ourselves and probably get an electrician in just to do the final AC stuff. So going from that, I've got plenty to do. I'm out here routing a board. So funnily enough, the apprentice was supposed to show up today to do some work, but found other things to do. In fact, she's been chasing stuff down on the phone for stuff for the boat and stuff for around the house, and just getting on with normal family stuff. But all the hatches here are now ready to have the foam glued down, and Janet will be in a bit later, and she's actually been foaming all these and really using up every little scrap of foam that we have. Now, it's not that critical that this be one piece of foam. We're using up all our scraps of foam, and we have many, many scraps. The windows have arrived, they're here. Very excited about those. We have to get them out of the way because it's going to be a while before we put those in. The davits over there are going to need a rejuvenation, so she's going to be working on those. And out here, now I absolutely love the idea of having a perfect installation of my wiring. So all those wires done correctly, a bit like this picture here. This is sort of the thing I want to aim for. Hopefully I can get it reasonably close. More importantly, I'm actually going to put it on a white backboard there. This is a piece of PVC board that I've been holding on to for exactly this reason, and it's a bit like starboard lumber. I'm not actually sure what it is, but I was given it a few years ago by Joel, the joinery guy here, and what I'm doing is I've just cut an 800 high by 1200 wide panel that's going to fit in behind the dinette module that's going to house our inverter, all our DC systems, and obviously our bus bars and RCDs and circuit breakers and the like, which will then extend off to the AC DC panels. So what I'm doing here is basically I've cut it and I'm just putting a nice little edge on it. I'm going to polish this edge up with some wet and dry sandpaper, make it all look nice, and that panel will fit in behind the dinette module. Alright, so it only just fits. I've got this slit build hose here because I'm crawling in and out of this all the time, so I cut myself to pieces, and yeah, it just only just fits. But you can see down here, this is where this panel's going to fit. Within here we're going to have a Victron shunt, 2 maybe 3 Lynx distributor packs, the Servo GX, the Multiplus 2 inverter, and a number of other items including bus bars and RCDs and obviously fuses and the like that are going to feed the DC system. Now the DC panel is going to live here, and the AC panel will be here on a door. So I've basically got a cabinet door here that'll open up with the DC panel. I have a 28 slot DC panel, and I've got I think it's a 9 slot AC panel, shore power, reverse polarity and the like. Now that line all the way in there is actually a bulkhead that's going to be separating it from the house. And then on top of that, I need to run conduits and cable trays along the back here, basically to be able to ferret cables right across this whole bridge deck. And I'll probably also have water running across here at some point. I'm not really sure where I'm going to put that, whether I mount this up higher on the wall or down on the floor where it is there. I'm likely to put it up an inch or so, and I can run some water, some plumbing along the floor here underneath it. I'm trying to keep everything nice and neat within this cavity, but yeah, that's going to look pretty good. That'll polish up nicely and give me a nice white board to seal our wiring on. Righto, with that all cleaned out in there, I need to take a few measurements for, firstly for batteries, secondly for my air conditioning unit, which is actually going to be here. So this is a Webusto aircon unit, but it is a 12,000 BTU unit. I got it at a ridiculous price. I think they've actually upgraded and put Bluetooth on the new version, but I'm more than happy to operate this manually for the price I got it for, and I'm going to see if it fits. It's nice to get to a stage in the build where you're actually starting to decide how things are going to fit. This is one of the more important things to Janet, not so important to me, but certainly to Janet. She's a Brit, so she doesn't like being cold, and you know, basically I don't mind a bit of cold. I can't handle the heat, but after 5 years of working here, I'm actually getting more and more liking the heat than I am the cold. Funnily enough, this thing came up at a reasonable price, so I thought I'm going to get it. Now the only issue is it's got to go in here. I'm hoping it's going to fit in this particular hatch and not that one. I'll put it in there and then bring it out of here, because the batteries are going to be in there. I don't want to remove these or 100 kilos of batteries to get the air conditioner out, should we ever need to service it. But most importantly, I'm going to make sure it fits. Now this area should be sealed with insulation, and obviously the only thing we want going in and out of there is seawater and the drain and the condensate drain and the electrical wiring and the ducting. So there's a number of things that have to happen here. Pretty much I intend to put it in this way so that the ducting will come off the back here and across both sides to feed both of these rooms and the main saloon. Obviously I'm not going to worry about the stern cabins. They're going to have to operate with fans, but at least if we can keep our main living areas, i.e. the two forward cabins and the saloon cool and subsequently warm, obviously that's going to make a massive difference to the livability of this boat. If I can feed this part, oh yeah, yep, that's perfect. As you can see, I've got a fair amount of space in there. Ideally, I want this to be further towards that back wall, but I need to allow for a number of surfaces that are going to run along that back bulkhead. Now that bulkhead isn't straight, it actually dog legs here and goes like that. So we lose a bit of space there, which we gain back in the bedroom, but no, that's no problem. That's going to fit in there perfectly. And ultimately we're going to have a lid on here, which will have soundproofing all the way around it, obviously to keep it nice and quiet. And obviously we want to draw air from the highest point in the boat, thinking that the cold air is going to drop, so we need to have a temperature sensor as well, and there's a number of things we need to do to make this thing operational and obviously function correctly. Ideally you have this as low as possible and then pipe the air high and then have it fall back down to the lower areas of the boat, but I can't. In our case, we don't have a level surface that is low enough, particularly down in the hulls. We really don't have the space for it. The last few days have been all about getting this big dinette module ready to install, and I've just come to the conclusion I'm just going to have to put it in. I've been in there under that mongrel for about the last half a day, and to be honest I didn't film any of it. It's been very remiss of me not to film it, but I would have lost you all because I've sworn that much. Honestly, it's very tight spaces in there. It's like having an MRI, and I've got an area underneath the table that is a raised platform, and I wish it wasn't there, to be honest. I just cannot work out how I'm going to glass it. I've got a roller on a stick, and I intend to put 2 layers of 600 double bias on the inside of it, and then what I'll do is I'll do the other side as well. So it's been an absolute stinker. I'm in there laying in fiberglass. I've just vacuumed it out again for about the 5th time, trying to get it to the point where I'm now going to go in and tab it. I've formed the bulkheads. I'm basically ready to put them in, but I can't put them in until I glass this whole thing in. And once it's in, there's no going back. It's going to be challenging getting the electrics routed through there, and an air conditioning duct and some water as well. But I just have to put it in and then work it out, because if I don't, I'm going to be hamstrung for the next 2 or 3 months trying to work around this module. The better thing I can do is just glass it in and then work out how to access it, and that'll include a couple of access hatches where needed. I'm just totally and utterly overwhelmed at the moment with this particular part of the build. Don't think I can get any more frustrated. Janet's up in the factory. I don't think she's talking to me because I've just got the shit. I'm going to have to go in there. I can actually go in through the electrical compartment, but it's easier going in through there, catalyse some resin and just glass wherever I can to at least secure the structure in place. Right, okay, what I've got to do, I've got to glass and tab all underneath this plinth here, and yeah, I'm only going to be able to reach probably about 3/4 of it, I think, by the looks, and I'm going to have to do it all sort of almost laying on the side, which is going to be just shit. But anyway, I've got to get on with it. I'm going to basically laminate all the way along here and tab 2 layers of 600 double bias on there, and then what I'll do is the other side, I'm going to put in a filler and a radius and continue that around.
Build a boat, they say. You'll have a great time. Fucking project for life. Yeah, right. Alright, so I'll wet that out over there, and alright, so this has got to go there somehow, and I can only just reach it, so let's see how we go. See if we can do it. Ah, too easy. Oh, pretty glad to be out of there. I've done all underneath there. I'm just going to do around the perimeter here, and I've been in there for probably 2 hours laying in fiberglass dust, and I think I want to cry. Oh, Jesus. I die a little bit every day here at work, guys. I honestly do. I die a little bit every day, and that almost did me in. Jesus, that was a shocker. But it's now done. All glass, the longest curve here now is all laminated. I've got 2 layers in, peel applied it all. It was a stinker of a job. And now I'm going to continue on doing around these perimeter here. So I'll go around here and around there, and I'll stop on that corner there. Once that's in, I can really start to integrate everything else in. Start to think about flow coating and getting these electrical cabinet sections all complete.
It's the next morning and the tabbing's complete. I've basically completed the tabbing of this entire module all the way along the front face here. Now I need to work with the back section. You can see it's all tabbed all the way around there. Now I've got a bit of an issue back here. This is the main compression bulkhead of the boat in here, in behind the electrical cabinet, and this area here needs to be attached to the bulkhead. Now, how I intend to do this, there is a little bit of a gap. It's about a 5mm problem, and there's only one way to deal with it, and I've also got to deal with the top up there. Now, what I'm going to do is actually epoxy that all the way along and install some of the composite angle, which will give me essentially as good as tabbing, and then I'm going to tab over the top of it. Similarly to what I've done up here on this bulkhead here, you can see there's actually tabbing and composite angle in place. So I have some angle here, and as you can see, it really does provide for a very neat completion of the job. But what it also does, it ties it in nice and neatly and gives me the same thickness as 4 layers of 400 double bias, and then I'm going to put 2 600s over the top of that particular section. So that will actually complete that and seal it. And then on this face here, now this will have a veneer on this bulkhead here. This area here will be fed back about 50mm, and then I'll be able to glass this to the actual front side of the bulkhead. These modules are actually quite thin, all of them, and then I'm backing them with small amounts of foam rather than making the entire module a complete big chunk of solid glass and foam. I've tried to keep it nice and light, and that's really where I've taken a lot of the weight out of this boat. Most boats are, these modules will be chopper gun manufactured, and basically you have varying thicknesses from 3 millimeters to 1 centimeter in places. I've actually got foam core where needed, and I haven't wasted material and resin and obviously chopper fibres on areas that really aren't required. So yeah, that's all done now, all basically sealed up in there. The thing's not moving again. Time to start tying in the remainder of it, which is up in here and along the actual backside. Now I've also got to tie in up here. So you can see here it's sitting on the bulkhead here in the forward cabin. That'll have composite angle along there, and I can now glass this whole thing together, and that'll be tabbed on both sides and then one complete layer over the top to make it nice and neat and integrated perfectly into the room here, which means I can start to finish out these rooms.